The Blackbirds, a true crime podcast about the dark souls that roam among us. Hosted by Abby and Janet. I'm Abby, and you're eating.
Pretty accurate, actually. Janet is fine.
Janet, all right.
I'll more likely to respond to that than if I pick something else.
All right, Abby and Janet, and this is my podcast, I guess, which is super odd because I've had a vision of having another podcast, and then I had a friend that was like, you know way too much about this stuff to not be using it, and so I just decided to start the podcast, and then so now the Blackbirds is born, which is kind of like just my idea of like the blacks, like not black souls, but the dark souls in this like world that are just like everybody else, but they're not like everybody else. So I really wanted to cover at the beginning of all this too is like this is very explicit and very horrible things that happen to people that we will cover. And with that being said, I just wanted to acknowledge that, and now I'm too stoned to realize what I was going to say.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Is acknowledging that everything that is said with respect and out of a place of respect for the victims and their families. Sometimes things may be said in a joking manner or sound like there's not weight to give into it, but you guys, I cry at commercials. I have bawled my eyes out at, like, the Olympics. I won't watch them with my husband anymore because all I do is bawl at people achieving their accomplishments. And then, you know, God forbid they had a deceased mother and they're holding a photo of her. I've lost it. I'm done.
On the floor.
You know, so I think part of the reason that, at least I know personally, that I'm drawn to these types of people in these scenarios is because of the deep empathy for the families and the victims and just in general anyone affected by it. You know, it's a scary thing, and it's something that it's almost the more you know about it, the less power it has. So for someone with severe obsessive compulsive disorder for being killed in their sleep, knowing how all the serial killers have done it has been very helpful. Because I know that the Golden State Killer came in through sliding glass doors that were left unlocked, and I know that you can get in even if there is a broom on the bottom. So I have bars in the middle installed in my sliding glass doors, and I always make sure they're locked. But when I'm laying in bed at night saying, yep, this is the night I die, totally, it was not the last, million, it's tonight, yes, it's happening, I can go, probably not through the sliding glass doors because of the bars and the locks, so they're going to have to find something else. And it gives me the power back. You ready, Abby?
Yeah, no, definitely all that. Thank you for picking up where I was saying. But this is something that we both have been interested in for a very, 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 very long time. And it's not for any means of just ill will towards anyone other than the people that are committing these crimes. We just really enjoy talking about this subject because it's something that gets us away from the shit that already is every day for us going on, especially in the world that we live in today.
And it's actually kind of funny, and I wonder, like, it was a comparison I made earlier, coincidence, is I don't live in the town that we're from, but we're from basically the same place.
Yeah.
We grew up in very similar environments that we both don't fit in with. And we kind of, we're drawn to these topics and this lifestyle of being interested in, so that's our intro. We know we didn't really do a great last podcast recording, and we just kind of wanted to cover a few topics and just, what we just previously stated. But today we are covering something that Janet really thought would be interesting to cover, and there's a lot of twists and turns and speculations and just things that are all across the board, and it makes a good true crime story like they had been stating in the TV show. And even though it is such a quote unquote
good true crime story. There's so much heartbreak that still resides along the whole, like, underneath of the story till this day. So, if you want to go ahead and introduce it.
Yes, so we will be covering the Torrey Pines Murders today. I went to college down in San Diego, so when I was working at home, I work from home, and some days I work from home, and while I'm doing data or something that, you know, I just need to kind of have a really good background noise to keep me going, I'll just put the ID channel on all day. My husband's not the biggest fan of it. He thinks it makes me paranoid. He's probably right. I wouldn't tell him that to his face, but yeah. So we were watching the show on this, and I texted Abby, and I was like, you know, we should cover this one. I go, it's kind of from near where we're from. It's interesting. It's got some nuances to it.
And then my creepy ass was like, oh yeah, they covered that in My Favorite Murder. And it was like the most random, like 128 or something the episode was from. You're like,
yeah, and I was like, oh. I don't even know that's where I know it from. It's one of those things where you know you've seen it before, but your brain is like, you need to go down that rabbit hole again. Oh, like, I know you've gone down it once or twice or 3 times before, but I mean, maybe you missed something on the Wikipedia page.
Or maybe we can just solve it on our own.
You know, me with my background in education, and yeah, exactly.
My background in waitressing.
Yeah, you know, maybe, I think at this point, my dog has a better chance of solving it than I do, but, so these murders, they are linked, but they're not officially linked, correct?
No, I was planning on definitely covering that towards the end, but,
so you want to start with, Barbara Nantes?
Barbara Nantes. Well, let's set it up because it's 1978.
It is August 13th, 1978.
Grease is out.
Ooh.
Jonestown happened.
Okay.
We're here in the 70s. It's about to end.
We're August 13th, so she was 16, right?
15?
15. One was 16, one was 15. I can't remember. I'm so sorry. Anyway, she was in her teens and still legally had to go to school.
Yes.
So this is back before school started in the middle of summer. And so school usually started the day after Labor Day.
Okay.
So we're about a little under a month before they're going back to school. So, you know, 15, 16, middle of summer.
Surfer boyfriend.
70s.
Star cheerleader.
Yeah. They're having fun. They're enjoying themselves. And that kind of helps set the scene.
And then her parents had gone out of town, so she had somebody watching her for the weekend, but her and her boyfriend, Jim Altz, had gone to the beach, to Torrey Pines Beach with some friends and hung out and did what most California teenagers did at the time. And then they went and were with some friends, and her boyfriend went and chose to sleep on the beach with some sleeping bags, and his friend had gone to the car with his girlfriend. Ooh, excuse the dog.
Sorry, that was rude of Arizona. She is locked out now.
She's our guest star for the day. But the boyfriend's friend had gone to sleep in the car with the girlfriend, and then Jim woke up and he was covered, all wet and just incoherent, and then realized that she was missing.
Yeah, so then he ran to the car in the parking lot, woke them up, and that's when his friends got real concerned because he's covered head to toe in blood. And his head does not look right. No,
he was totally beaten up. And he had, in every little bit of will in his body, had told his friend to go to the car, or to go look for Barb. He said, look, where's Barb? Go find her. And he ended up coming upon her body and naked and cut up, and she was dead.
Yeah, and what made it really interesting when they found her body, or concerning, was the fact that she was severely beaten and she was strangled to death, but mostly that her breasts were mutilated.
Right.
In a manner or in a fashion that they actually aren't really sure what the purpose of that was. But it was obviously very purposeful because he also had raped her.
Right. That's something that's super key, is that she was found raped and the breasts were mutilated, which is something that comes up later on in 1984 when they find Claire Hugh.
Oh, so she was actually in town visiting her grandparents. Mm-hmm. And, like, you know, they said in the show, like, every teenage her age, I believe she was 15 or 16, like, every, you know, teenage her age, she wanted to go to Torrey Pines Beach. So if you haven't been, actually, Torrey Pines Beach is about 2,000 acres, and it is a coastal reserve, meaning it's protected land. Because the Torrey pine tree, is one of the rarest pines in the United States, and so because they grow wild there, and there's a lot of them, it is a protected area of 2,000 acres of Torrey Pines at Torrey
Pines.
Yeah. What can I say? Californians are real creative with their naming.
Real creative.
So everyone wanted to go see Torrey Pines Beach. I did a field trip for geology class at Torrey Pines Beach.
Oh, really?
Once. Yeah. So there's a lot of, once upon a time when I was a science major. We've done a few things. But yeah, so it's an important place. So coming from out of town, you know, it's not just a place that teenagers would want to go to the beach and surf and hang out. It's also a place for people who obviously are into places with rare pines. It's a park, basically.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been down there.
It's gorgeous. I highly recommend it. But yeah, so she wanted to go visit, like, you know, everyone her age would want to do, and she just wanted to hang out there all day.
Right.
And that's what she did, and then,
so there was a night that her and her friend, whose name is Kim, snuck out, and they went to the beach, and as soon as Kim got there, Kim had a panic attack. And was like, this isn't right, like, we shouldn't be here, and so they left, and, like, she was leaving to go back to, I believe, Rhode Island was where they were from, and she told Claire, like, make me a promise, don't come back here, like, don't sneak out, don't come back here, and 2 nights later, she chose to not listen to her and sneak out and go to the beach.
Unfortunately, she never returned.
And unfortunately, she was found by a beachcomber the next morning.
And she was found in almost the exact similar condition that Barbara was found in, where she was strangled, beaten, raped, and her breasts had been mutilated.
And then they talk about in the show where the beachcomber's name was Wally Wheeler, and he had, like, came up to the parents, you know, once they were down there and found out, and was like, I was the one that found her, like, saying he was psychic, and started, like, writing letters to her, and, like, just, like, kind of totally out of character, and we don't really know too much about this guy, but they kind of suspected that it was him for a long time, and, you know, the cops had questioned him, nothing really came about it. And then, you know, fast forward, and they're like, you know, we didn't really know what happened until they found out that he had jumped from the 13th story of a building to his death, which is bizarre in its own, to add on to everything else that's already been happening with these murders.
That's not the only suicide in this case either.
And it's not. It's this case, it just keeps going.
It has a lot, and it's a case that I actually hope they may look into reopening at some point, just because I do think that when we talk about the DNA, there's a few things where I'm like, I almost think we owe it to them to, like, retest it, or at least just take a look at it.
Well, and with everything that we have available now, like, especially ancestral DNA and stuff, like, you would think with, like, not how popular that this murder is, but, like, how many unanswered questions there are, especially within the DNA.
But even within the communities, you know, San Diego, La Jolla, Torrey Pines area, it's, you know, it can be a close-knit community at times.
Right.
So, you know, I feel like people who have been there since the 70s, this is something I could maybe even ask my dad if he remembered, and he may have. I think there was a lot of drugs involved in those times, so we may not remember it. But, you know, it's something that if you lived in that area, you know about it.
Yeah. And so then, fast forward here from 1984 to 2008. The 2008 San Diego Police Department put the two murders together. They posted it online and was like, we believe that these cases are connected. And that threw the families into shock, at least Barbara's family from the first murder. And really, again, they didn't really have any proof other than the fact that their murders were both very similar in just what happened to the victims. So
yeah, so they have DNA linking and they have a modus operandi
well, DNA match didn't happen until 2012.
Oh, true. Yeah, so they linked them because of the breast mutilation and the manner.
Right.
And neither of them knew about the other murders. Like, they hadn't heard about it. It wasn't publicized. Like, it really was out of the blue because they hadn't, you know, press wasn't like it is now.
Right. So in 2008 is the first time that they were even thrown into the same compartment of crimes. And you kind of see the sister was, like, really upset because she didn't even know about the murders. And it's like you still have all of those unanswered questions where there's still somebody out there doing these crimes, at least during this time period of those, like, 6-7 years where they were happening. But then, you know, you fast forward to 2012 when the police get the DNA match through all the new DNA technologies that are cheesy and corny and shown up through all these 48 hours and in 2020s. But yeah, so they get a match for two different people. One whose name is Kevin Brown, who was a criminalist for the San Diego Police Department.
He had no criminal history. People described him as kind of a nervous Nelly type.
Right.
He was the kind of guy that was just very quiet, would have shown up on nobody's radar.
But, I mean, they do go out and kind of explain, like, while the murders happened, he was kind of more of a bachelor type and, you know, doing what most people in their 30s do, where they're living their best life. And, you know, he wasn't married yet, but, I mean, it was just different back then. You just did what you did, and it was that. But that was his life during the 80s. It's not even covering what was going on during Barbara's murders, which is kind of weird because there's a lot of correlations between Claire's murders and a lot less that has to do with Barbara's murders, which we'll kind of talk about. Because they only find the DNA of Kevin and then the DNA of Ronald Tatro. And Ronald Tatro, there's really not a lot of information on him, but they were both found through the vaginal swab. And the only reason that Kevin Brown's DNA showed up, it was seminal DNA, which means that it was from his own semen, which was pretty much a control that was used in the labs just so they can make sure that the seminal DNA analysis was working correctly.
Yeah, so apparently back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s.
Back in the day when they needed a control, they would just use themselves.
Their own seminal fluids.
But because of that, there was a lot of cross-contamination. There were reports that swabs were left out on counters for days. Past workers said that the labs were not very clean like they are now. Cross-contamination wasn't considered an issue like it would be now. So it is very plausible that he brought his stuff in for control. It ended up on this sample somehow, some way.
It's super possible. I mean, they didn't even switch gloves from sample to sample, so who knows what people were touching or cross-contaminating at the time. Which is why they should just go back and use familial DNA and resample these samples. And I mean, you would have at least thought that they would have taken the samples from both of the vaginal swabs and at least compared them if they think they're connected, which from what it sounds like they haven't done yet.
Or maybe there's no more sample left. Maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of things. Who knows? Maybe they are doing all of this right now.
And we just have no idea.
And we just don't know because why would they tell me? They should, but why would they? But yeah, well, but Ronald, he did have a record.
Ronald was in prison at the time of, I believe it was Barbara's murder.
Yes.
That he was in prison for rape at the time.
Yes, he had his criminal history included a lot of sexual assault. So he kind of fit the bill, but he could not have committed one of them. Which, and, a lot of theories read was that, they weren't the same person. They were copycats of each other. Maybe done in an effort to detract or, there's a lot of reasons they could be similar. It really could just be a fluke. It could be the same person.
But why will we never know if Ronald did it or not?
Because they're both dead.
Because Ronald died.
Ronald actually died in a boating accident. At age of 67.
Quotation marks.
Yeah, there was a little bit of...
I mean, from what they said, his wallet was on the seat and his glasses, everything was kind of like set, like everything was still okay. But they said it was an accident, but it looked more of a suicide, but they classified it as an accident. So it's super fishy, and then on top of it, it happened on the anniversary of Claire's death.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, there's coincidences in life, and then there's those coincidences in life.
Yeah, there's coincidences, and then there's, you really need to pay attention to this for a good reason. And then Kevin also died.
Which is super unfortunate because they spend all of this time, years and years of what they could be spending on actually investigating it, accusing him relentlessly that he committed these murders.
I found it odd that knowing that they brought their specimen in a sample and knowing about cross-contamination, that when he was flagged, but he wasn't put on that 84 criminal case. That's also what made it interesting is, yeah, they had to bring in their sample, but he wasn't working that case.
No, but somebody near him was.
Somebody near him was, but he wasn't working it. But you would think that possibly they would have just thrown it out or talked to him a little bit more, because it makes sense that his DNA was there based on all the information at hand.
But according to the San Diego police, that there was no cross-contamination happening. It was the other people working in the lab that was like, oh no, definitely it happened.
Yeah. Because, the bosses in the offices on the 10th floor always know what's happening.
Why would they want to tarnish their reputation? Heaven forbid.
And then, so Kevin, he committed suicide after the relentless, after he was accused of the crime. Yeah,
so pretty much, he was happily married to his wife, Rebecca. At the time of these investigations, the cold case investigations, later on, in 2012 when they found out, and like she said, on the morning of October 20th in 2014, his wife walked in to the Bible being opened to a psalm about being wrongfully accused, which I find just devastating in its own right. And then they found him near a cabin that I believe he vacationed at, hung by a tree, and it was just awful because, like I said, they spent so much time wrongfully accusing him of this murder, and still to this day we're here in 2019 and we have no answers at all.
I think, for the sake of his family, for the sake of his kids and grandkids, just being able, to know, or, when his grandchildren Google his name, because who doesn't do that, having it be a positive, or, at least having answers.
Right.
But, I think...
Well, she filed a wrongful death suit.
What was the outcome?
Nothing. We don't know yet. It hasn't came out yet.
Oh.
This was as far as the 2020 or the 48 hours I watched 2000. That had been at least 2015 because he passed away in 2014. I think 2016 is when they did the 48 hours.
Okay.
And they had talked about how they were filing the wrongful death suit because they just wouldn't let it go. Like, the cops had told him, like, you better confess because we know that you did it. And then he was just like, there's nothing I can do anymore. And he just kind of gave up.
As of 2018, November of last year, it was still in court. But, yeah, so that's kind of the gist on the two cases.
So, as of, two things. Claire, the second murder from 1984, had left a will to her parents, which I found very interesting.
A teenager had a will?
A teenager left a will. Not like a full printed lawyer built out will, like one written in like a journal or something.
You're really breaking up.
And I just found it amazing because I've personally thought about like, hey, like just in case one day, like my brother passed away suddenly. So like I wouldn't want to just leave nothing behind. So it's just wild to think somebody that young was like, just in case.
I mean, yeah, I have it all, but I'm also married to an estate's attorney, so...
There's that part.
Huh?
I said there's that part.
Yeah, so, I mean, not having a will and an advance direct, like, that was one big thing that... But he also writes those every day and counsels people on them, so... But, like, at 16, I wasn't thinking about that.
Really?
I mean, I had OCD. I was convinced someone was going to kill me. But I also didn't have two pennies rubbed together half the time. So, I don't know. There wasn't anything, like... Do you remember, like, what it said?
No, not on me. I should have written down some parts, but it was... I mean, kind of to the lengths of, like, thank you, like... I've lived my life, like, it's been a great life, and, like, I can't ever thank you guys enough for, like, what you mean to me, and blah, 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 like, that kind of stuff.
I wonder, too, if maybe it was just, like, you know, something teenager, she's writing in a journal, or, you know. I could actually see myself doing that at that age, because I did like to write a lot.
Well, and it just, like, she was a very ambitious, like, outspoken teenager. Like, she stood up for what was right and what was wrong, and I think she was kind of ahead of her time mentally, even though, you know, it was the 80s and she was a young teenager. She just still, from what her parents said, really stood out for what was right, and I think that just really had an impact on the person that she was. Well, we did it.
That went better than last time, I think.
A lot better.
Oh, yeah.
Smoother. Oh, yeah. We met for the first time last time.
Yes, we did. And then we promptly both smoked and drank and to cut the edge off. And I cut the edge and some off.
So, bear with us because we're both learning this and learning each other. But
so you get to join us. You
get to join us on our new friendship and potential coworker endeavor. Thank you for that word that I was looking for.
Got you.
All right. Well,
thanks, guys.
We'll see you next time.